I stood in the middle of our living room, folding the last pair of swim trunks into the suitcase, feeling that buzz of excitement you get when everything's finally coming together. The Mediterranean trip was my dream for us, me, Alyssa, Callan, and Isla. I'd spent months planning it, poring over brochures and websites, picking out the best villas with ocean views, private boat tours through the Greek islands, and pasta-making classes in Italy that I knew the kids would love. First-class tickets were the cherry on top, a little indulgence to make sure we all felt special from the moment we stepped on the plane. Alyssa was in the kitchen, double-checking passports, while Callan and Isla darted around, chattering about gelato and dolphins. I could already picture it, the four of us laughing on some sun-soaked balcony, the kids' faces smeared with sunscreen, Alyssa's smile brighter than the sea. I zipped up the suitcase, locked the front door, and hefted the bags toward the car. We were so close, just a quick drive to the airport, and we'd be off. Then my phone rang. I fished it out of my pocket, expecting maybe a last-minute reminder from work since Alyssa and I had to finish up one meeting before joining the kids tomorrow. But it was Callan's name on the screen. My stomach did a little flip. Why was he calling me? He was supposed to be with Judith, Alyssa's mom, boarding the flight right now. I answered, and his voice came through, small and shaky, like he was trying to hold it together. Dad, Grandma said we're unnecessary baggage. She left us at the gate. The words hit me like a punch. I stopped dead in the driveway, the suitcase slipping from my hand. Isla's little sob echoed in the background, and I could hear an airport announcement over the line. My heart just stopped. Judith was supposed to take them. Our plan was airtight. Alyssa and I would wrap up our work today, and she'd fly with them, keeping them safe until we caught up. Now my kids were alone? Abandoned? I tried to breathe, to think straight, but all I could see was red. Judith Carrington, with her designer sunglasses and her constant air of being above everyone else, had ditched my children like they were old luggage she didn't want to carry. Callan said something about a lady from the airline staying with them, but I barely heard it over the roar in my head. I told him to stay put, that I was coming right now, and hung up. Alyssa stepped outside, saw my face, and froze. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tight. I could barely get the words out. "Your mother left them at the gate. Said they're unnecessary baggage." Her eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth, but I was already moving, grabbing my keys. I told her to call the airline, figure out what was happening, while I got to the kids. The drive to the airport was a blur. Every stoplight felt like a personal insult, every second ticking by an eternity. My mind raced. How could she do this? Judith had always been cold, always acted like I was some outsider who'd stumbled into her perfect family. But this was a new low. I kept seeing Callan's face in my head, that tough little guy trying not to cry, and Isla, my baby girl, probably clinging to her penguin stuffy, confused and scared. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. By the time I pulled into the terminal parking, I was shaking not just with worry, but with something darker, something that wanted to make Judith pay. I found them near the gate, just like Callan said. Isla ran to me the second she saw me, burying her face in my shirt, her little arms tied around my waist. Callan stood a few feet away, holding their backpacks, his jaw set like he was trying to be brave. A gate agent hovered nearby, looking apologetic. I dropped to my knees and pulled them both into a hug, feeling their warmth against me, their shaky breaths. "I've got you," I said, over and over. "Daddy's here." The agent handed me a folded note, Judith's handwriting, crisp and careless. "They'll just hold me back. You can get them on the next flight." I stared at it, my blood boiling. She didn't even say sorry, didn't even pretend to care. I stood up, the note crumpled in my fist, and thanked the agent for watching them. My phone buzzed, Alyssa, asking if they were okay. I told her they were with me now, safe, but I could hear the tremor in her voice, the shock. She said she'd be there soon, that she was leaving work now. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, and hung up. The kids looked up at me, waiting for me to fix this, to tell them what came next. I forced a smile, ruffled Callan's hair, and squeezed Isla's hand. "We're gonna be fine," I said. But inside, I was already plotting. I pulled up the airline app on my phone, double-checking the bookings. Every flight, every hotel, every excursion, it was all on my card. My name, my money. Judith was up there, probably sipping wine at 30,000 feet, thinking she'd won. I smiled again, but this time it was cold, sharp. She had no idea what was coming. She thought she could toss my kids aside and still ride my dime all the way to Rome? Not a chance. I'd make sure she landed with nothing but the consequences of what she'd done. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood there in the middle of the airport terminal, the noise of rolling suitcases and muffled announcements buzzing around me like flies I couldn't swat away. My arms were still wrapped around Callan and Isla, their small bodies pressed against me, and I could feel the tremble in Isla's shoulders, the way she clung to her stuffed penguin like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Callan stood a little straighter, his backpack slung over one shoulder, but his eyes, those big, brown eyes that usually sparkled with mischief, were dull, wet at the edges. He was trying so hard to be tough, my little man, and it broke something in me to see it. The gate agent lingered nearby, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, like she wasn't sure if she should stay or bolt. She'd already handed me that note from Judith, that flimsy piece of paper that might as well have been a slap across my face. They'll just hold me back. You can get them on the next flight. That's all she wrote. No apology, no explanation, just her cold, clipped handwriting telling me my kids were a burden she couldn't be bothered with. I crumpled the note tighter in my fist, feeling the paper bite into my palm. The rage was there, hot and heavy, simmering just under my skin, but I kept my face calm for the kids. They didn't need to see me lose it, not now, not when they were already scared and confused. I knelt down again, looking them both in the eye. You're okay now, I said, my voice steady even though my insides were churning. We're together, and that's what matters. Grandma made a mistake, but I've got you. Isla nodded, her lip wobbling, and Callan just stared at the floor, kicking at a scuff mark with his sneaker. I stood up, took their hands, and led them toward a row of chairs near the gate. The agent followed, hesitant, then said, Sir, if you need anything, another flight, a refund, I can help. I nodded, told her I'd figure it out soon, and she backed off, leaving us alone. We sat down, the kids on either side of me, their carry-ons plopped at our feet. Isla's penguin stared up at me with its dumb, stitch-on smile, and I had to look away. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Alyssa again. I answered, keeping my tone low so the kids wouldn't hear too much. They're with me, I said before she could ask. Safe. Sitting right here. She let out a shaky breath on the other end, relief mixed with something else, anger, maybe, or shame. I can't believe she did this, Graham, she whispered. I don't even know what to say. I glanced at the kids, saw Callan watching me, and turned my head slightly. She left them, Alyssa. Just walked away. There's a note and everything. She went quiet for a second, then said, Don't do anything crazy, okay? Just bring them home. I'm on my way. I didn't answer right away. Crazy? No. I wasn't going to scream or storm the plane, though part of me wanted to. But I wasn't going to let this slide, either. I'll see you soon, I said, and hung up. I looked at Callan and Isla again, their faces so small and lost in this big, chaotic place. You guys hungry? I asked, trying to shift the mood. Isla shook her head, but Callan shrugged. Maybe a little. I grabbed their bags and led them to a little food court nearby, picking up some fries and a couple of sodas. We sat at a sticky table, the kids nibbling while I watched people rush by, families, couples, solo travelers, all heading somewhere. My family was supposed to be on that plane, too, laughing and dreaming about Italy. Instead, we were here, picking at cold fries, because Judith decided my kids weren't worth her time. The note was still in my pocket, and I pulled it out, smoothing it flat on the table. Callan glanced at it, then away. Did she really mean that, Dad? He asked, his voice so quiet I almost missed it. I didn't know what to say. Yeah, she meant it. She'd done it, hadn't she? But I couldn't tell him that. She wasn't thinking straight, I said instead. Grown-ups mess up sometimes, too. He didn't look convinced, and Isla just hugged her penguin tighter. I took a sip of my soda, the fizz burning my throat, and let my mind churn. Judith was up there now, probably stretched out in her first-class seat, sipping something fancy, not a care in the world. She thought she'd gotten away with it, dumped the kids and kept the vacation I'd paid for. My vacation. My money. That's when it hit me, sharp and clear, like a light flipping on. She didn't just abandon my kids, she abandoned me, too, the guy who'd shelled out thousands to make this happen. And she didn't even blink. I leaned back in my chair, the plastic creaking under me, and felt that cold smile from earlier creep back onto my face. Alyssa wanted me to bring the kids home, and I would. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my phone again, opened the banking app, and checked the charges. There it was, flights, hotels, excursions, all tied to my card. My name was on every booking, every confirmation. Judith didn't have a dime in this game, just her entitlement and her gall. I could see it now, her landing in Rome, stepping off the plane with that smug look, expecting a driver with a sign and a cushy villa waiting. She had no clue I held the strings. I could cut them all, right here, right now. Cancel everything and leave her stranded, just like she'd left my kids. The thought made my pulse quicken, not with anger anymore, but with something else, something like power. I glanced at Callan and Isla, saw them sharing a fry, a tiny spark of normal coming back to their faces. They didn't deserve this. But Judith? She'd earned it. Alyssa texted me then. She was pulling into the parking lot. I stood up, gathered the kids' stuff, and took their hands again. Mom's here, I said, and Isla perked up a little. We walked back toward the entrance, the cool airport air brushing past us. I wasn't going to make a scene, like Alyssa asked. No yelling, no big dramatic fight. But as we headed for the car, my mind was already moving. Judith wouldn't enjoy a single minute of that luxury trip, not on my dime, not after what she'd done. I'd make sure of it. She wanted to call my kids unnecessary baggage? Fine. Let's see how she liked being the one left behind, with nothing but her own choices to keep her company. This wasn't over, not until I said it was. I sat in the driver's seat of our SUV, the engine humming softly as Alyssa buckled Isla into her booster seat in the back. Callan climbed in beside her, his backpack clutched tight like it was some kind of shield. The airport lights glared through the windshield, casting sharp shadows across the dashboard, and I gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Alyssa slid into the passenger seat, her face pale, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, waiting. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for what I was going to do next. The kids were quiet, too quiet, and it made the air in the car feel heavy, like we were all holding our breath. I started driving, pulling out of the parking lot, the tires rumbling over the asphalt. They're okay, I said finally, glancing at Alyssa. Shaken up, but okay. She nodded, her lips pressed tight, and I could tell she was fighting to keep it together. The road stretched out in front of us, headlights cutting through the dusk, and my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Judith was on that plane right now, probably reclining her seat, flipping through some in-flight magazine like nothing had happened. She'd left my kids, my 10-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter, sitting alone at a gate with a stranger, and she didn't even care. That note kept flashing in my head. They'll just hold me back. Like they were dead weight, an inconvenience to her perfect little getaway. I'd spent months planning that trip, every detail, every euro, every dream of us together, and she'd tossed it aside like it was nothing. Like we were nothing. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt, and I forced myself to loosen my grip on the wheel. Alyssa reached over, her hand brushing mine. Graham, she said softly, what are we going to do? I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to scare her, or the kids, who I could see watching me in the rearview mirror. Callan's eyes were sharp, curious, like he knew something was brewing. Isla just hugged her penguin, her little face half buried in its fur. We're going home, I said, keeping my voice even. We'll figure it out there. Alyssa nodded again, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. She knew me too well, knew that calm tone wasn't the end of it. And she was right. I wasn't just going to let this go. Judith thought she could walk all over us, take my money and my plans and leave my family in the dust. She was wrong. We got home, the house dark and quiet except for the suitcases still stacked by the door, mocking me with their unused tags. Alyssa took the kids upstairs to settle them, and I grabbed my laptop, dropping onto the couch. My phone buzzed, probably work, wondering why I hadn't checked in after the meeting, but I ignored it. I logged into my travel account, the screen glowing bright in the dim room. There it was, the itinerary. Judith's flight, soaring over the Atlantic right now, 30,000 feet above us. The hotels in Rome, Santorini, Barcelona, all booked under my name, paid with my card. The private tours, the drivers, the fancy dinners. Thousands of dollars, all mine to control. I scrolled through, my finger hovering over the cancel button. She was up there sipping champagne, probably smug as hell, thinking she'd pulled one over on me. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that comes when you know you've got the upper hand. I started clicking. First, the hotel in Rome canceled. No plush suite waiting for her when she landed. Then the driver gone. No one to pick her up at the airport with a polite sign and a cold bottle of water. The excursions, the Colosseum tour, the vineyard lunch, canceled, one by one. I worked fast, my heart pounding but my hands steady. By the time Judith's plane touched down, she'd have nothing, no reservations, no plans, just her carry-on and a whole lot of confusion. I didn't stop there. I canceled the Greece leg, the Spain leg, every piece of that trip she thought she'd stolen from us. Non-refundable, sure, but I didn't care about the money right then. This wasn't about cash. It was about her feeling what my kids felt. Abandoned, stranded, alone. Alyssa came downstairs, her footsteps soft on the carpet. She stopped when she saw me, the laptop screen lighting up my face. "Graham, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. I didn't look up. "Taking care of it," I said. She stepped closer, peering over my shoulder, and gasped. "You're canceling everything?" I nodded, hitting confirm on the last booking. "She doesn't get to enjoy it, Alyssa. Not after what she did." She didn't say anything for a minute, just stood there, her arms crossed. I could feel the tension rolling off her. Part of her wanted to argue, to tell me to stop, but another part, the part that was a mom, understood. "She'll be stuck," she said finally. "In Rome, with nothing." I closed the laptop, leaning back. Good. Let her figure it out. But I wasn't done yet. I opened a new tab, started searching for something else, something for us. The kids deserved better than this mess, and so did we. I found it after a few minutes, a luxury eco-resort in New Zealand. No ancient ruins or crowded cities, just wide-open spaces, wildlife tours, ziplining through forests, and these cool stargazing domes where you could sleep under the night sky. It was perfect, different, fresh, ours. I booked it right then and there, flights for the 4 of us leaving in 2 days, all on my card again. Alyssa watched, her expression softening. "New Zealand?" she asked. I turned to her, finally meeting her eyes. "Yeah, no Judith, no drama. Just us." She hesitated, then nodded, a small smile breaking through. "The kids will love it." I heard little feet on the stairs, Isla, padding down in her pajamas, Penguin still in tow. "Daddy, are we still going on a trip?" she asked, her voice sleepy but hopeful. I pulled her onto my lap, brushing her hair back. "Yeah, baby. A better one. You, me, Mommy, and Callan. Somewhere awesome." She smiled, snuggling closer, and I felt some of that weight lift off my chest. Callan poked his head around the corner, listening. "Where?" he asked. "New Zealand," I said. "They've got glowworms and zip lines." His eyes lit up, just a little, and I knew I'd made the right call. Judith's plane would land soon, and she'd step into a mess of her own making. No hotel, no driver, no clue. I didn't feel bad. She'd left my kids behind, called them baggage, and now she'd see what it was like to be cut loose. Meanwhile, we'd be halfway across the world, building something new, something she couldn't touch. I hugged Isla tighter, listening to Alyssa hum softly as she headed to the kitchen. This wasn't the trip I'd planned, but maybe it was the one we needed. And Judith? She could sip her champagne all she wanted. It wouldn't taste as good when she realized the rug was gone, and I was the one who'd pulled it. I sat on the couch in our living room, the laptop still warm on my thighs from all the canceling and rebooking I'd done earlier. The house was quiet now, the kids upstairs in their beds, probably drifting off with thoughts of glowworms and zip lines instead of the airport chaos. Alyssa came down the stairs, her slippers scuffing softly against the wood, and she dropped onto the cushion next to me. She didn't say anything at first, just leaned her head back and stared at the ceiling. I could feel the storm brewing in her. Anger, embarrassment, maybe even guilt. And I wasn't sure how to start this. The suitcases were still by the door, a reminder of what should have been, and the silence between us stretched tight, like a rubber band ready to snap. I closed the laptop, set it on the coffee table, and turned to her. "They're okay," I said again, like it was some kind of anchor. "Callan and Isla, they're tough. We'll make this right for them." She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed upward, glassy in the dim light. "I should have known," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I should have seen this coming with her. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, sitting up straighter. "Graham, she's my mother. How could she do that to them? To us?" I didn't have an answer, not a good one anyway. Judith had always been a puzzle to me, all sharp edges and cold smiles, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. I'd seen her brush me off plenty of times, treat me like I didn't quite belong in her fancy Carrington world, but abandoning her own grandkids? That was a new kind of cruel. "I don't know," I said, leaning forward, elbows on my knees. "But she did, and we've got proof." I pulled out my phone, opened the call logs. Callan's shaky voice message still saved there, and the airline's email with the agent's report. I handed it to her, watching her scroll through it. Her face tightened with every line, her thumb hovering over the screen like she wanted to erase it all. She told the gate agent they'd be fine, she muttered. Said we'd sort it out. Like it was some scheduling mix-up, not leaving them behind. I nodded, pulling the crumpled note from my pocket and tossing it onto the table. And this, she didn't even try to hide it. Alyssa picked it up, read it again, and let it fall, her hands curling into fists. I keep thinking maybe she panicked, or the flight was delayed, or something. But no, she meant it. She stood up, pacing toward the kitchen, then back, her arms crossed tight over her chest. I stayed where I was, giving her space. You don't have to defend her, I said, keeping my tone even. Not to me. She stopped, turned to me, her eyes flashing. I'm not defending her, Graham. I'm just, God, I'm so mad I can't think straight. And humiliated. My own mother. She trailed off, shaking her head. I got it. Judith wasn't just some random in-law to her. She was the woman who'd raised her, the one she'd spent her life trying to please. And now this. I stood up, stepping closer. Then let's talk about it. All of it. Because this isn't new, Alyssa. She froze, her gaze locking onto mine. I could see her wrestling with it, wanting to argue, but knowing I was right. What do you mean? She asked, but it was weak, like she already knew the answer. I took a breath, picking my words careful but firm. Judith's been doing this for years. Not this exact thing, but the way she treats us, me, the kids, even you sometimes. Like we're not really her family. Like I'm just the guy who married into it, and the kids are extras. Alyssa flinched, but she didn't interrupt, so I kept going. Remember Callan's 5th birthday? She showed up late, brought some expensive toy he didn't even like, and spent the whole party talking about her trip to Paris. Or when Isla was born, and she told you not to spoil her because she wasn't the first. Her mouth opened, then closed, and I saw the memories clicking into place. She sank back onto the couch, her hands in her lap. I thought that was just her way, she said, almost to herself. She's always been particular. About appearances, about who fits where. I figured she'd warm up eventually. I sat next to her again, closer this time. She didn't. And today wasn't about warming up. She left them, Alyssa. Called them baggage. That's not a mistake. That's who she is. She looked at me, tears brimming but not falling, and I hated how much this hurt her. But we couldn't keep pretending. Not after this. That's when we heard it, soft footsteps on the stairs. Isla appeared, her penguin dangling from one hand, her pajamas wrinkled from tossing in bed. Mommy? Daddy? She said, her voice small. Did Grandma forget us on purpose? My heart cracked right open. Alyssa made a choked sound, and I scooped Isla up, pulling her between us on the couch. No, baby, I said, even though it was a lie I hated telling. Grandma made a bad choice. But we didn't forget you. Never will. Alyssa reached over, brushing Isla's hair back, and I saw something shift in her, something hard and final. She didn't forget, Alyssa said quietly, more to me than Isla. She chose. Isla nodded, sleepy and trusting, and leaned into me. I held her close, feeling her little heartbeat against my chest. Alyssa wiped her eyes, her jaw setting like she'd made up her mind. She's done this before, she said, her voice steadier now. Not this bad, but little things. Telling me you weren't family material when we got engaged. Saying the kids were too loud, too messy for her house. I kept making excuses because she's my mom. But you're right, Graham. This isn't the first time she's drawn that line. I squeezed her hand, and this time she let me. She crossed it today, I said. Not just with me, or the kids with you, too. We sat there, the three of us, until Isla's breathing slowed and she dozed off in my arms. Alyssa looked at me, her eyes clear now, fierce. What you did, canceling her trip. I was mad at first, but I get it now. She doesn't deserve it. Not after this. I nodded, relief washing through me. We're done letting her call the shots, I said. New Zealand's ours. No lines, no baggage, just us. She smiled, faint but real, and leaned her head on my shoulder. Later, over a quiet dinner, just leftovers, nothing fancy, we kept talking. The truth spilled out, raw and messy. Judith's years of subtle cuts, her way of keeping us at arm's length, her obsession with her own image. Alyssa admitted it hurt, but saying it out loud seemed to lighten her somehow. I carried Isla up to bed after, tucking her in, and checked on Callan, who was sprawled out with a comic book he'd already read 100 times. You good, buddy? I asked. He nodded, then said, "Grandma's kinda mean." Huh? I ruffled his hair. Yeah, but we've got each other. He grinned, and I felt that fire in me settle into something stronger. Judith had crossed into cruelty, but she wouldn't break us. Not tonight, not ever. I stood in the kitchen, the morning light streaming through the window, bouncing off the counter where I was pouring coffee into a mug. The house smelled like toast and the faint tang of orange juice, and I could hear the kids upstairs, their voices mixing with the clatter of them getting ready for the day. Alyssa was at the table, flipping through a New Zealand guidebook I'd printed out last night, her finger tracing lines about glowworm caves and Maori villages. We were leaving tomorrow, me, her, Callan, and Isla, heading to a place Judith couldn't touch, a fresh start after the mess she'd left behind. My phone sat on the counter, silent for now, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. Judith's plane had landed in Rome a few hours ago, and I could almost picture it, her stepping off, all confidence in designer heels, expecting a driver with a sign, only to find nothing but a crowded terminal and a dead-end itinerary. I took a sip of coffee, the heat grounding me, and glanced at Alyssa. She looked calmer today, less like she was carrying the weight of her mom's betrayal on her shoulders. Last night's talk had shifted something, cracked open the truth about Judith, and let us breathe a little easier. But I wasn't naive. Judith wouldn't just shrug and accept what I'd done. Canceling her whole trip, hotels, tours, everything wasn't subtle, and she'd know it was me. I'd pulled the rug out from under her at 30,000 feet, and she'd be furious. Part of me couldn't wait to hear her try to spin it. The other part just wanted to get on that plane to New Zealand and leave her in the dust. The kids came bounding down the stairs, Callan with his backpack already slung over his shoulder, Isla trailing behind with her penguin tucked under her arm. "Can we see the Kiwis tomorrow?" Isla asked, her eyes bright, the airport fading a little from her memory. I grinned, setting my mug down. "Yeah, baby. Kiwis, glowworms, the works." Callan plopped onto a chair, grabbing a piece of toast. "What about Grandma? Is she still in Italy?" Alyssa's hand froze on the guidebook, and I caught her eye. "She's there," I said, keeping it light. "Probably figuring things out." He nodded, like that was enough, and I let it drop. They didn't need the details, not yet. My phone buzzed then, sharp and insistent, and I knew who it was before I even looked. Judith's name flashed on the screen, and I felt that cold smile tug at my lips again. Alyssa saw it, too, and her eyebrows went up. "You gonna answer?" she asked, her tone half curious, half wary. I picked up the phone, thumb hovering over the button. "Might as well," I said, and hit accept, putting it on speaker so Alyssa could hear. "Graham," Judith's voice crackled through, tight and clipped, like she was barely holding it together. "What happened to the bookings?" "There's been some mistake. I got here, and there's no driver, no hotel, nothing." I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, letting her ramble for a second. "I've been standing in this airport for an hour, trying to sort it out. The hotel says the reservation's canceled, everything's canceled. What's going on?" "No mistake," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. "You left my kids behind, Judith. At the gate, with a note like they were trash you didn't want to deal with. So I canceled it all. You don't get a vacation on my dime after that." There was a pause, a long one, and I could hear the hum of the airport on her end. Announcements, footsteps, the chaos of a place she didn't control anymore. "That's ridiculous," she snapped, her tone rising. "They were fine. The airline had them. I didn't abandon anyone. You're overreacting, Graham, and now I'm stuck here because of your petty little tantrum." Alyssa's jaw tightened, and I saw her shift in her seat, but I kept my cool. "Petty," I said. "You called them unnecessary baggage. Left them with a stranger. My kids, Judith. You don't get to play victim here." She huffed, loud and dramatic, like I was the unreasonable one. "They would have slowed me down, whining, dragging their feet. I thought you'd just put them on the next flight. This is insane. You've stranded me in Rome." I laughed, short and sharp, couldn't help it. "Stranded? You've got your wallet, don't you? Book something yourself." "Oh, wait, peak season. Good luck with that." She started to argue, her voice pitching higher, but I'd heard enough. "You left them," I said, cutting her off. "Now you know what it feels like. Deal with it." I hung up, the silence in the kitchen ringing louder than her protests. Alyssa stared at me, her mouth half open. "She's unbelievable," she said finally, shaking her head. "Not even sorry." I nodded, sliding the phone back onto the counter. "Nope. Just mad she's inconvenienced." The kids were watching now, Callan with his toast halfway to his mouth, Isla wide-eyed. "Was that Grandma?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, softening my tone. "She's figuring things out in Italy. We're focusing on us now, okay?" They nodded, and I ruffled Callan's hair, trying to shake off the call. Later, after Alyssa took the kids to pack their bags for New Zealand, I checked my email. The airline had sent a refund confirmation for Judith's canceled extras. Non-refundable, my ass. I'd pushed hard enough to get something back. Meanwhile, she'd be scrambling. I did a quick search on my phone. Rome hotels in peak season were insane. Triple what I'd paid with the group rate, and most were booked solid. She'd texted Alyssa after the call, a string of complaints about Graham's stunt, but Alyssa had let it go to voicemail. Good. Let her stew. I pictured her dragging her suitcase to some dingy Naples motel, her sunglasses hiding the glare she'd aim at everyone, and I didn't feel a shred of guilt. By afternoon, we were out the door, heading for a hike to clear our heads before the big trip. The New Zealand itinerary was packed: glowworm caves, wildlife trails, stuff that'd make the kids light up. I drove us to a nearby park, the air cool and crisp, and we hit the trail, Callan racing ahead, Isla skipping beside me with her penguin bouncing. Alyssa walked close, her hand brushing mine every few steps. "You think she'll ever get it?" she asked, her voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. "What she did?" I shrugged, watching Callan kick a rock down the path. "Doesn't matter if she does. She's out there. We're here. That's what counts." We reached a cave on the trail, not glowworms, just damp stone and echoes, but the kids loved it. Callan shouted, his voice bouncing back, and Isla giggled, chasing the sound. I stood at the entrance with Alyssa, the sunlight warm on our backs. "This is better," she said, leaning into me. "New Zealand's gonna be amazing." I wrapped an arm around her, feeling the tension slip away. Judith was in Italy, probably cursing my name in some cramped room, but I didn't care. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. My family was right here, laughing, running, healing, and tomorrow, we'd be on a plane to something new. She could keep her ruins and her rage. We had glowworms and each other, and that was more than enough. I leaned back in the cushioned seat of the eco-resort shuttle, the hum of the engine blending with the soft chatter of Callan and Isla in the row behind me. The New Zealand countryside rolled by outside, green hills dotted with sheep, jagged mountains peeking through the mist, a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Alyssa sat beside me, her hand resting on mine, her fingers tracing little patterns on my skin. We'd landed a few hours ago, bleary-eyed from the long flight, but buzzing with something new, something clean. The kids had barely slept, too excited about kiwis and zip lines, and now they were pointing out the window, Callan shouting about a cow, Isla giggling at how it stared back. I turned my head, caught Alyssa's eye, and she smiled small, real, the kind of smile that said we'd made it through the storm. The resort was everything the website promised. Wooden cabins nestled in a valley, glass domes for stargazing, trails winding through forests that smelled like pine and earth. We checked in, the staff all warm smiles and quick hands with our bags, and I felt the last of that airport weight slip off my shoulders. No Judith, no canceled bookings, just us. The kids bolted for the cabin the second we got the key, Callan swinging his backpack like a weapon, Isla clutching her penguin as she raced to keep up. "Slow down," Alyssa called, laughing, and I grinned, hefting our duffels over my shoulder. Inside, the place was cozy, big windows, a stone fireplace, bunk beds the kids claimed instantly. "I get top," Callan yelled, already halfway up the ladder. Isla pouted, then shrugged and flopped onto the bottom bunk, her penguin bouncing beside her. That first day, we didn't waste time. I signed us up for a snorkeling trip, shallow waters, perfect for beginners, and we piled into a van with a guide named Tane, a guy with a thick accent and a grin that never quit. The ocean was cold, slapping against my legs as I waded in, but Isla's squeal when she ducked under with her mask made it worth it. "Daddy, fish," she shouted, popping up, water streaming down her face. I swam over, helped her adjust her snorkel, and watched her paddle around, chasing little silver flashes. Callan was braver, diving deeper, his flippers kicking up bubbles. Alyssa stayed close, her hair plastered to her head, and when our eyes met underwater, I saw her laugh through the ripples. It was messy, loud, perfect. Us, together, no shadows hanging over us. Back at the cabin, Callan begged to try the wildlife photography tour next. I said yes. How could I not? And the next morning, we were out with a guide, trudging through bush with cameras slung around our necks. Callan took to it like he'd been born with a lens in his hand, crouching low to snap a fantail bird, its tail fanned out like a tiny umbrella. "Look, Dad," he whispered, showing me the screen, and I ruffled his hair, proud as hell. Isla stuck to me, pointing at bugs and flowers, and I carried her on my shoulders when her legs got tired. Alyssa trailed behind, sketching in a little notebook she'd brought. Trees, birds, us. "You're good at that," I said, peeking over her shoulder later. She blushed, tucking it away, but I saw the peace in her face, the way she was shedding that old pressure Judith always piled on. Nights were the best. We'd pile into one of those stargazing domes, glass bubbles with beds inside, and lie there, the sky exploding above us. Callan counted constellations, Isla made up stories about the stars, and Alyssa's hand found mine under the blankets. "This is what it's supposed to feel like," she said one night, her voice soft against the quiet. I squeezed her hand, nodding. "Yeah, just us. No schedules, no expectations, no one telling us who we should be." Judith couldn't reach us here, not with her calls, her emails, her guilt trips. Speaking of, my phone had pinged a few times since we landed. I checked it once. Emails from her, photos of her standing alone in front of crumbling Roman walls, captions like, "Wish you were here," or "Miss my grandkids." I didn't reply. Neither did Alyssa. Callan saw one over my shoulder, frowned, and said, "She didn't want us there, though." I shut the phone off after that. He was right. She didn't get to play sad grandma now. We ziplined the next day, soaring over treetops, the wind whipping past us. Isla clung to me on the tandem line, screaming then laughing, her little arms tight around my neck. Callan went solo, whooping like a wild thing, and Alyssa's grin was so big I could see it from the next platform. Again, Isla begged when we hit the ground, and I promised we'd do it tomorrow. That night, we roasted marshmallows over a fire pit outside the cabin, the smoke curling up into the dark. Callan burned his first one, laughed, and tried again. Isla got hers perfect, golden, gooey, and fed me half, her sticky fingers brushing my chin. Alyssa read aloud from a book we'd picked up at the gift shop, some Maori legend about the sky and the sea, and I leaned back, watching my family glow in the firelight. It wasn't about the money we'd spent or the places we went. It was the time, uninterrupted, ours. I taught Isla to skip rocks on a stream, her giggles echoing when she got one to bounce twice. Callan and I raced down a hill, tumbling into the grass, laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. Alyssa and I talked, really talked, about nothing and everything, late into the night while the kids slept. She told me she'd always felt like she had to prove herself to Judith, to be perfect, and how it had weighed her down. "I don't feel that here," she said, her head on my chest. "I feel free." I kissed her forehead, knowing exactly what she meant. This trip wasn't about Italy or luxury villas anymore. It was about choosing each other, building something Judith couldn't break. The emails kept coming, though, Judith's sad selfies, her little pleas for attention. I deleted them without reading past the subject lines. One night, Alyssa caught me, hesitated, then said, "Maybe we should answer. Just once." I shook my head. "She doesn't get to ruin this. Not for us, not for them." She nodded, slow but sure, and that was that. We weren't punishing her, not really. We were protecting our peace, guarding this bubble we'd made. The kids thrived. Callan's camera roll filled up with birds and bugs. Isla's penguin got a new adventure scar from a muddy tumble. Alyssa sketched more, laughed more, and I felt like the man I wanted to be, not the one Judith always dismissed. By the last day, we were sunburned, tired, happy. We sat on the cabin porch, watching the sunset paint the hills gold, and Callan said, "This is better than Italy, right, Dad?" I pulled him close, one arm around him, the other around Isla. "Way better, bud." Alyssa leaned into me, her sketchbook on her lap, and I knew we'd redrawn something here. Not just our plans, but our family. Judith could have her ruins and her regrets. We had this. Us, whole and unbroken, under a sky that felt like it went on forever. And that was worth more than any villa in the world. I stood at the kitchen counter back home, the familiar hum of our fridge kicking in as I unpacked groceries from the trip to the store. New Zealand felt like a dream already, 2 weeks of glowworms, zip lines, and starlit nights tucked away in my head, warm and bright. The kids were upstairs, Callan sorting his wildlife photos on his tablet, Isla chattering to her penguin about the kiwi birds we'd seen. Alyssa was at the table, sipping tea, her sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of us by that fire pit. We'd landed yesterday, jet-lagged but buzzing, and the house felt different now, quieter, maybe, or just ours in a way it hadn't before. The suitcases were still by the door, but they weren't mocking me anymore. They were proof we'd done it, left Judith's mess behind and made something better. My phone buzzed on the counter, cutting through the calm. I glanced at it. Alyssa's sister, Megan. I frowned, picking it up. "Hey, Meg," I said, leaning against the counter. "What's up?" Her voice came through, sharp and fast, like she'd been holding it in. "Graham, what the hell happened with Mom? She's been blowing up my phone, saying you sabotaged her trip out of spite, that you left her stranded in Italy because you're irresponsible. I need the real story." I caught Alyssa's eye across the room, and she set her tea down, leaning forward. I put the call on speaker, keeping my tone steady. "She left Callan and Isla at the airport, Meg. Abandoned them at the gate with a note saying they'd hold her back. I canceled her bookings, flights, hotels, all of it, because she doesn't get to ditch my kids and enjoy my money." There was a pause, then a low whistle from Megan. "Jesus." She didn't say that part. She made it sound like you overreacted to some mix-up, like the kids missed the flight by accident. Alyssa's jaw tightened, and I could see the fire flicker in her eyes. "It wasn't an accident," she said, loud enough for Megan to hear. "She chose to leave them, Meg. Wrote it down and everything." I nodded, pulling that damn note from my wallet. I'd kept it, crumpled and worn, as a reminder. "I've got proof," I said. "Call logs, airline reports, her own words. Callan's got a voicemail from her, too, if you want to hear it." Megan went quiet again, then said, "Send it. I need to know." I hung up, dug through my phone, and found the voicemail Callan had saved that day. His little voice asking Judith to wait, her cold reply, "You'll be fine, Callan. I can't deal with you right now. Tell your dad to fix it." I sent it to Megan, along with a photo of the note and the airline's email. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again, her this time, texting, "Holy shit, Graham. I had no idea. She's been lying to everyone." I showed it to Alyssa, and she let out a shaky breath. "She's spinning it," she said, "making us the bad guys." I nodded, but I wasn't surprised. Judith was a pro at playing queen, twisting stories, keeping her crown shiny. But this time, she'd gone too far, and the cracks were showing. By evening, the fallout hit. Megan called back, her voice softer now, stunned. I played the voicemail for Ryan, her husband, and he lost it. Said Mom's unhinged. I talked to Claire, too, Alyssa's other sister, and she's pissed. "Mom's been telling everyone you ruined her vacation because you're petty, but that note, that's not petty, Graham. That's cruel." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. "She's losing her grip," I said. "The family's seeing it now." Megan sighed. "Yeah, I always thought she was tough, you know. Strict. But this? Leaving the kids? I can't wrap my head around it. You did the right thing, canceling everything. I'd have done worse." Alyssa took the phone then, her voice firm. "Meg, she's been doing this forever, little digs, pushing us out. We just didn't call it what it was." Megan didn't argue. "I see it now," she said. "The way she talks about you guys, Graham especially, like you're not really family. I bought it for too long. I'm sorry." I waved it off, even though she couldn't see me. "It's not on you," I said. "She's good at this game. But it's over." Megan promised to talk to Claire again, spread the word, and hung up. Alyssa looked at me, her eyes wide. "They're turning on her," she said, almost like she couldn't believe it. I nodded. "Truth's out. She can't hide behind her stories anymore." The next day, Claire texted Alyssa, short, blunt. "Mom's a liar. I'm done with her drama." Ryan called me later, his voice gruff. "Graham, man, I can't believe she pulled that. You're a better guy than me. I'd have flown to Rome and chewed her out." I laughed, picturing it. "Tempting," I said, "but this works too. She's stuck with herself now." He chuckled, then got quiet. "You're good for them, you know. Alyssa, the kids. Don't let her make you doubt that." I swallowed, the words hitting deeper than I expected. "Thanks, man," I said, and meant it. Judith tried calling again that night. 3 times, straight to voicemail. I didn't listen, just deleted them. Alyssa saw, didn't stop me. "She'll keep pushing," she said, stirring pasta on the stove, "until she realizes no one's buying it." I shrugged, setting the table. "Let her. She's got no court left." Callan came down then, his tablet under his arm. "Dad, can I show Aunt Megan my bird pics?" I grinned. Yeah, bud. Send him. He sat next to me, tapping away, and Isla joined us, her penguin propped up like a dinner guest. Tell her about the zip line too, she said, and I laughed, pulling her onto my lap. Megan texted back later, photos of her and her kids, captions about planning a visit. We owe you guys a real family trip, she wrote. No mom allowed. Alyssa smiled at that, her shoulders relaxing. They're on our side, she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. I felt it, too. Not vindication for revenge, but for the truth finally breaking free. Judith had ruled the family like a queen for years, her word law, her image untouchable. Now her throne was crumbling, and it wasn't because I'd canceled her trip. It was because Callan's voicemail, Isla's scared eyes, that damn note. They'd stripped her bare. She couldn't charm her way out of this one. We ate dinner together, the kids chattering about New Zealand, Alyssa adding bits from her sketches. I watched them, my family, whole and loud in mine, and felt something settle in my chest. Judith's meltdown was her problem now. Her siblings, her court, they were deserting her, and I didn't need to lift another finger. The truth had done the work. Megan's words stuck with me. You did the right thing. Yeah, I had. Not for spite, not for some petty win, but because my kids deserved better. We all did. And sitting there, with pasta sauce on Isla's chin and Callan's laugh filling the room, I knew we'd already won something bigger than Judith could ever understand. I sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun slanting through the blinds, warming the wood under my hands as I sipped my coffee. It had been a week since we got back from New Zealand, and the house was settling into a new rhythm. Callan's wildlife photos tacked up on the fridge, Isla's penguin perched on the counter like a silent mascot, Alyssa's sketchbook left open to a drawing of us under those stars. The jet lag was gone, but the glow of that trip lingered, keeping us close. Today, though, there was a shadow creeping in. Judith had texted Alyssa last night. Short, insistent. We need to talk. In person. Tomorrow. Alyssa had stared at it for a long time before showing me, her face tight, with something I couldn't quite read. Closure, she'd said finally. I need it, Graham. I'd nodded, even though every part of me wanted to say no. But this was her call, her mom, her fight. So here we were, driving to a little cafe downtown, the kids at home with a sitter, the air between us thick with what was coming. The cafe was neutral ground, small, busy enough to keep things civil, with clinking mugs and the hum of conversation to drown out any shouting. We got there first, sliding into a booth by the window, and I watched Alyssa fiddle with the sugar packets, her fingers restless. You sure about this? I asked, keeping my voice low. She nodded, quick and sharp. I have to say it to her face. She needs to hear it. I didn't push. Whatever she needed to unload, I'd back her up. The door jingled, and there she was, Judith, striding in with her sunglasses perched on her head, her purse clutched like a shield. She looked thinner, maybe, her tan from Italy still clinging to her skin, but her eyes were hard, her mouth set in that familiar line of someone who thought they were the wounded party. She slid into the booth across from us, setting her purse down with a little thud. Well, she said, her voice clipped. You've made quite the mess, haven't you? I felt my jaw tighten, but Alyssa spoke first, her tone steady. No, Mom. You did. Judith blinked, like she hadn't expected that, then waved a hand. Oh, please. Canceling my entire trip? Leaving me stranded in Rome? That was childish, Graham. Vindictive. And now the family's turned on me because of your little stunt. I leaned forward, my coffee mug warm against my palms. You've humiliated yourself, Judith, I said, keeping it calm but firm. You abandoned children at an airport. Not luggage, not pets, children. My kids. That's on you. Her eyes narrowed, and she adjusted her sunglasses like they were a crown she was setting straight. They were fine, she snapped. The airline had them. I didn't want to deal with tantrums and whining. I'm not their babysitter. I thought you'd handle it, like you always do. Alyssa made a sound, low and sharp, and I saw her hands clench under the table. Handle it, she said, her voice rising just enough to cut through the cafe noise. They're my kids, Mom. Your grandkids. You don't get to ditch them because they're inconvenient. Judith rolled her eyes, like we were overreacting, and that's when I knew she didn't get it, wouldn't get it. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said. I needed a break. You have no idea what it's like, stuck with them slowing me down. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. A break. I said, my voice harder now. You were on a trip I paid for, my money, my plans, and you left them with a note calling them baggage. You don't get to spin this like you're the victim. She glared at me, her lips thinning. You've always had it out for me, Graham. Ever since you married into this family, you've acted like you're better than us. This was your chance to stick it to me, wasn't it? I laughed, couldn't help it, short and bitter. Better than you? No, Judith. I just don't dump kids at gates and expect a medal for it. Alyssa cut in then, her hand slamming down on the table, rattling the mugs. Enough, she said, and Judith flinched, surprised. This isn't about Graham, Mom. This is about you. You left them, Callan crying, Isla scared, and you didn't even care. You've been doing this forever, pushing us out, acting like we don't fit your perfect picture. But this was cruel. And I'm done pretending it's okay. Judith stared at her, mouth half open, then recovered, leaning back with a scoff. Cruel? I was tired, Alyssa. They were tired. I made a call. You're turning it into some grand betrayal because Graham's got you wrapped around his finger. That hit me, Alyssa, too, because I saw her eyes flash. No, she said, slow and clear. You don't get to blame him. I saw the note. I heard the voicemail. You told Callan you couldn't deal with him. That's not tired, Mom. That's you choosing yourself over everyone else, like always. Judith shifted, her fingers tightening on her purse. You're exaggerating. The family's buying your sob story now, but they'll see through it. I'm not the monster here. I shook my head, leaning in. You're not a monster, Judith. You're just selfish. And it's catching up to you. Alyssa took a breath, her voice dropping but heavy with something final. You never deserved to be part of our trip, or our lives, if that's how you see them. My kids aren't baggage. They're everything. And if you can't understand that, we're done. Judith's face went still, like she'd been slapped, and for a second, I thought she might crack, might actually feel it. But then she straightened, her mask sliding back on. Fine, she said, standing up, her voice icy. If that's how you want it, I'll go. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've thrown away. She grabbed her purse and walked out, the door jingling behind her, leaving her coffee untouched. We sat there, the cafe noise washing over us, and Alyssa let out a long, shaky breath. I reached for her hand, and this time she took it, squeezing tight. You okay? I asked. She nodded, slow at first, then firmer. Yeah, I needed to say it. She won't change, but I'm not carrying her anymore. I pulled her close, my arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into me, her head resting against mine. You were badass, I said, and she laughed, soft and tired. So were you. We left the cafe, the air outside cool and sharp, and drove home in silence, not heavy, just full. The kids were waiting, Callan showing off a new photo edit, Isla begging for a story. Alyssa joined them on the couch, her sketchbook forgotten for now, and I watched from the kitchen, the weight of the day settling. Judith hadn't apologized, hadn't bent, but she didn't have to. Alyssa had said her piece, drawn her line, and that was enough. The family was shifting. Megan, Claire, Ryan, they'd seen the truth, and Judith's reign was over, whether she admitted it or not. I didn't need her to say sorry. I just needed my family, right here, laughing, whole. And as Callan's voice carried over, arguing about birds, I knew we'd won the only fight that mattered. I stood in the living room, the late afternoon light filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The house smelled like the lasagna Alyssa was baking in the oven, a warm, familiar scent that wrapped around us like a blanket. Callan was sprawled on the couch, his tablet propped up as he scrolled through his New Zealand photos, narrating them to Isla, who sat cross-legged beside him, her penguin tucked under her chin. See, this is the fantail, he said, pointing at the screen. It kept following us. Isla giggled, nodding like she remembered every second of that hike. I watched them, my chest tight with something good, pride, maybe, or just relief that they were okay, really okay, after everything. Alyssa came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and caught my eye. She smiled, soft and steady, and I knew she felt it, too, this new calm we'd carved out. It had been a few days since the cafe showdown with Judith, and the dust was settling. Megan had texted yesterday, saying she'd talked to Claire and Ryan again, and they were all done with Judith's games, no more excuses, no more pretending. Judith hadn't called since she stormed out, and I figured she was licking her wounds somewhere, plotting her next move, or just stewing in her own mess. I didn't care much either way. What mattered was us, me, Alyssa, the kids, and the boundary we'd drawn. She wasn't cut out of our lives completely, Not yet. But she wasn't at the center anymore. That spot was ours now, and we were guarding it fierce. I grabbed a stack of mail from the counter, flipping through bills and junk, when Alyssa sat down next to the kids, pulling Isla onto her lap. "What's the plan for tonight?" she asked, her voice light. "Movie night," Callan said, not looking up from his tablet. "Something with animals." Isla nodded, bouncing a little. "And popcorn." I grinned, tossing the mail aside. "Deal. I'll make it extra buttery." They cheered, and Alyssa laughed, the sound easing something in me I hadn't realized was still knotted up. We were healing slow, messy, but real. The kids didn't ask about Judith much, just little mentions here and there. And I could see them letting it go, trusting us to keep them safe. That trust was everything. Later, after dinner, lasagna devoured, plates stacked in the sink, we settled into the couch with a nature flick about penguins, Isla's pick. She snuggled into me, her penguin hugged tight, whispering, "They're like mine," as the screen showed a waddling colony. Callan sat cross-legged on the floor, closer to the TV, pointing out facts he'd learned in New Zealand. Alyssa leaned against my other side, her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her, feeling the warmth of them all pressed close. Halfway through, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, Judith's name again. I ignored it, letting it vibrate itself quiet. Alyssa glanced at me, but didn't say anything, just squeezed my hand. We weren't ready for her, not tonight, maybe not for a while. The next morning, I took the kids to the park, giving Alyssa some quiet to sketch or just breathe. Callan raced ahead with a soccer ball, kicking it against a tree, while Isla tugged me toward the swings. "Push me, Daddy," she said, and I lifted her up, her little legs kicking as she soared higher. "Like the zip line," she shouted, and I laughed, remembering her squeals in New Zealand. Callan joined us after a bit, sweaty and grinning, and we sat on a bench, sharing a water bottle. "Grandma's not coming back, is she?" he asked out of nowhere, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. I took a breath, picking my words. "She's still around, Bud," I said. "But she's got to earn her way back to us. What she did wasn't okay." He nodded, kicking at the dirt. "Yeah, I like it better with just us." Isla leaned into me, quiet, and I hugged them both, feeling that truth settled deep. Back home, Alyssa was waiting with a surprise, plane tickets printed out, sitting on the table. "What's this?" I asked, picking one up. "New tradition," she said, her eyes bright. "Yearly family getaways. Nothing fancy this time, just a cabin in the mountains, a few hours away. Hiking, fishing, no exclusions." I grinned, pulling her close. "No adults only." She shook her head, laughing. "Never. It's us, always." The kids overheard, piling in with questions. "Can we roast marshmallows? Is there a lake?" And I promised we'd plan it together. I booked it that night, my cards swiping through the site, locking in a week of campfires and trails. No Judith, no drama, just love and shared memories. Days turned into weeks, and we found our groove. Judith sent a few more texts, short, stiff apologies that didn't mean much, but we didn't bite. Alyssa answered once, neutral, "We need time." That was it. Megan came by with her kids one weekend, a noisy, chaotic visit that felt right. Pizza boxes and board games, no tension. Mom's still whining. She told us over coffee, the kids screaming in the backyard. But no one's listening anymore. I nodded, stirring sugar into my mug. "She'll figure it out, or she won't. Not our problem." Megan smirked. "You're good for her, you know." "Alyssa, she's tougher now." I shrugged, but it stuck with me. Tougher, yeah, but softer, too, in the ways that mattered. The kids kept healing. Callan hung his best photo, a blurry kiwi bird, in his room, proud as anything. Isla drew pictures of us in New Zealand, stick figures under stars, and taped them to the fridge. They didn't flinch at Judith's name anymore, just let it pass like a cloud. Alyssa and I did, too, talking less about her, more about us. One night, after they were asleep, we sat on the porch, a blanket over our legs, the air cool and crisp. "I keep thinking about what she said," Alyssa murmured, her head on my chest. "That we'd regret pushing her out." I tightened my arm around her. "Do you?" She shook her head, quick and sure. "No, this feels right. She has to earn us back, not the other way around." I kissed her hair, the stars above us faint but steady. "She might never. We've got enough." She nodded, her breath warm against me, and we stayed there, quiet, letting the night wrap around us. The next trip was coming, mountains, marshmallows, the four of us, and I could already see it. Callan fishing, Isla chasing fireflies, Alyssa sketching by the lake. No exclusions, no baggage, just us building something new. Judith could knock all she wanted, but this was our legacy now: love, trust, a family redrawn on our terms. And as the crickets sang, I knew we'd keep it, no matter what came next. I stood in the garage, sorting through camping gear, tents, sleeping bags, a dented lantern I'd had since before the kids were born. The air smelled like oil and dust, and the late spring sun filtered through the open door, warming the concrete under my boots. It had been months since the New Zealand trip, months since the cafe showdown with Judith, and life had settled into something solid, something ours. Alyssa was inside, packing snacks for our camping trip, a week under the stars, just the four of us, no frills, no interruptions. Callan and Isla were in the backyard, kicking a soccer ball around, their laughs drifting in every time the breeze pushed the door wider. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I fished it out, expecting a text from Alyssa about marshmallows or bug spray. Instead, it was Judith, her name glaring up at me like a ghost I'd almost forgotten. Ski trip invite, the message read. Adults only. Join us. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. A ski trip, fancy lodges, hot toddies, Judith's crowd of polished friends sipping wine by a fire. Adults only. No kids, no mess, no Callan with his muddy sneakers or Isla with her sticky fingers. I could picture her sending it, sitting in her pristine living room, thinking she'd dangle this like some golden ticket and we'd come running. I set the phone down on the workbench, leaning against it, and let out a slow breath. She hadn't learned a damn thing, still drawing lines, still picking who counted. I grabbed a flashlight from the pile, tested it, bright, steady, and started typing a reply. We won't be attending. Our children are not baggage. They're the destination. I hit send, no hesitation, and tossed the phone back down. Done. Alyssa poked her head in then, a bag of pretzels in her hand. You okay? She asked, catching the look on my face. I nodded, jerking my chin at the phone. Judith. Ski trip invite. Adults only. Her eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, setting the pretzels down. What did you say? I showed her the message, and she read it, her lips twitching into a small, fierce smile. Good, she said, handing it back. That's exactly right. She didn't ask if I was sure, didn't second-guess it, just squeezed my arm and headed back inside, leaving me with the gear and a quiet kind of pride. We weren't bending anymore. Not for her. That night, we piled into the car, tents in the trunk, cooler wedged between the kids' feet, and drove out to the campsite, a couple hours away in the hills. The road wound through pines, the air cooling as we climbed, and Callan pressed his face to the window, counting deer. Isla sang some made-up song about penguins and campfires, her voice high and wobbly, and Alyssa joined in, off-key but grinning. I drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the console where Alyssa's fingers brushed mine every now and then. This was it, our new tradition, our yes to each other, our no to anything that tried to split us apart. Judith's invite was already fading, a blip I wouldn't let touch this. We got there as the sun dipped low, painting the lake orange and gold. The campsite was simple, dirt and trees, a fire pit, a flat spot for the tent, and the kids ran wild the second I parked, chasing each other around the clearing. I set up the tent with Alyssa, her laughing when I tangled the poles, me cursing under my breath but grinning back. Callan dragged over firewood he'd gathered, proud as hell, and Isla helped me stack it, her little hands careful. We got the fire going, flames licking up into the dusk, and sat around it, the crackle mixing with the chirp of crickets. Alyssa pulled out the marshmallows, and Isla speared one, holding it over the fire with my help. Golden, not black, she said, serious, and I nodded, turning it slow until it was perfect. She bit into it, gooey strings on her chin, and fed me the other half, giggling when it stuck to my beard. Callan took his turn, burning his first one, black and crispy, and laughing as he tossed it into the fire. Try again, bud, I said, handing him another stick, and he got it right the second time, smug when he popped it in his mouth. Alyssa read aloud from a book we'd brought, some old campfire tale about a bear and a lost hiker, and her voice wove through the night, steady and warm. The kids leaned in, eyes wide, and I watched them, the firelight dancing on their faces. This was what Judith didn't get, what she'd never get. Callan and Isla weren't extras, weren't baggage to shove aside. They were the point, the reason the stars felt brighter out here, the reason this felt like home even in a tent. Later, we played cards in the tent, the lantern casting shadows on the canvas. Callan beat me twice, his grin sharp and triumphant, crowing, "You're bad at this, Dad." Isla teamed up with Alyssa, giggling every time they won a hand, and I faked a groan, letting them revel in it. We crawled into sleeping bags after, the kids between us, their breathing slowing as the night deepened. Alyssa reached over them, her hand finding mine, and whispered, "This is better than skiing." I squeezed back, nodding in the dark. Damn right. The week rolled on like that, mornings by the lake, fishing with Callan, who caught a tiny trout and cheered like it was a whale. Afternoons hiking, Isla on my shoulders when her legs gave out, pointing at every bird she saw. Evenings with stories and marshmallows, the fire our anchor. Judith texted once more midweek, "You're making a mistake," and I deleted it without a second thought. Alyssa saw, didn't flinch. "She's still trying," she said, stirring the fire with a stick. "Let her," I replied. "She's got nothing left to pull." By the last night, we were dirty, tired, happy. The kids roasted their own marshmallows, Callan's golden, Isla's a little charred, and Alyssa read the end of the bear story, her voice soft against the rustle of leaves. I leaned back on my hands, the ground hard under me, and looked at them, my family, lit up by the flames, whole in a way Judith could never break. Callan caught my eye, grinned, and said, "We should do this every year, Dad." Isla nodded, marshmallow on her nose. "Forever." I laughed, pulling them both into a hug. "Deal." Driving home, the car quiet with sleeping kids, Alyssa turned to me, her face soft in the dashboard glow. "You were right to say no," she said. To her invite. This is us." I nodded, my throat tight. Saying no to her was saying yes to them. "To you." She smiled, leaning her head back, and I drove on, the road stretching dark and sure ahead. Back home, unpacking the gear, I felt it solid in my bones, the power of that no. Judith could keep her ski trips, her adults-only world. I'd said no to her walking over us, no to her splitting us up, and yes to this, Callan's laugh, Isla's sticky hugs, Alyssa's quiet strength beside me. The lantern flickered as I set it on the shelf, and I knew I'd keep saying it, every time it mattered. No to the ones who'd hurt us. Yes to the ones who walked with me. That was my power, my choice, and I'd never let it go.